Hello everyone, it's Blue, and I know some of you may think I'm crazy, but hear me out. Bannerlord should have been released an entire year later. Okay, so let me start off my explanation by looking at the Steam charts of the game. And in case you did not know, Steam Charts is a website that tracks player stats for almost every single game on Steam. And if we take a look at Bannerlord stats, we can see that within the first 3 months, Bannerlord's player count lost 90% of its peak player population as well as 90% of its average player population. It has gone from 250,000 peak players to 2,500 peak players within 3 months. As well, the average player count at release was 114,000 people, and now the average amount of players is 1,400. This is all within the first 3 months of release. Bannerlord did not retain a huge player count at all. It was one of the most played games on Steam at a certain moment. This player count dropped significantly. And of course, a drop in player population after release is inevitable and should be expected with almost any game with few exceptions. However, a 90% drop in player population after slightly under 3-ish months of the game being released, that is a bit on the high end to say the least. And this game has had terrible player retention, and if a year of development was added to this game, it will have fixed what should have been fixed upon release, and this drop in players could have been significantly reduced, and Bannerlord could still be thriving. Yes, it's doing okay, but it could be doing significantly better if another year had been used to develop the game. And, as well, I'm willing to bet the majority of you watching this video are part of the 90% population of players that left the game. I don't blame you at all though, because even I am a part of that population. But now that I explained my backing to this statement, let's really get into how a year of development could have actually fixed this game for the better. Okay, before we start, a little disclaimer. I'm fully aware that this game is in early access and is being improved upon and has been improved upon, but this game was still released way too early to truly be in what is early access. Okay, so let's talk about the initial release of the game. The game was in fact playable, yes. I'm not even going to talk about the various bugs because they were just bugs. I'm going to be talking about actual gameplay and core mechanics. And I'm just going to say it. But it's like the development team did not even play their own game before releasing it. They did not test the core game at all. At least they didn't test the single player aspect, not one bit. Let me give you an example. If you did a playthrough early on within the release of the game, like the first days, first week, you have easily noticed how one kingdom snowballed to power and almost took out every other single empire within the game with little to almost no contest. This was a massive problem at the start of the game, and with any sort of playthrough beforehand, before release, by the devs, they could have easily noticed this, because I know for a fact the general player base noticed this immediately upon playing the game when it was released. It was addressed relatively soon, but still, it should have never been much of a factor in the first place if the devs actually played their own game. As well, it was clearly not tested. And another issue was workshops, which were also a game-breaking factor at the start of the game. And they greatly reduced any effort needed at the start of the game, as people made millions upon millions of dinars, the in-game currency, with wood workshops. And once again, here's another part of the game that could have easily been worked out with any sort of testing beforehand. And the next gameplay mechanic, which the devs still somewhat refuse to completely get rid of, which should be fixed and completely redone, are bandit hideouts. This was a key part of the actual storyline that came out at release, and they were absolutely atrocious to do. And they were horribly, and I mean horribly unbalanced. Imagine getting a massive 300-man army, but you're only allowed to fight with 10 randomly chosen people of those army. You could have had 10 peasants in your army, and the game would literally choose 10 peasants to fight against 50 bandits with bows, and they were practically snipers with their bows. They would slaughter you and your troops. This could have easily, and I mean easily, been tested if the devs have at least played their own game beforehand. And speaking of snipers, looters were absolutely broken in the beginning, and it was so simple too. Their rocks were sniper bullets. They destroyed players, and the rock was one of the most overpowered weapons you had to face, and it was looters. These guys are just the troops that you fight just to level up initially, not get your butt kicked by them. And if the devs just fought them once in their own game and realized the issue, it would have never been a problem. And of course, these are patched now, but nonetheless, the devs should have taken more time, if necessary, to at least play through their own game. There was beta testing for this game, but in the complete wrong category. The devs focused on multiplayer, and we can all see how that turned out. Broken as hell, and no one even plays it. And what really needed to have beta testing was a single part of the game. There should have been more time devoted to at least beta testing that, so we didn't have to go through those initial stupid, easily fixable problems at the start of the game. And honestly, single player is the main part of the game that people actually came to play Mount and Blade. No one cares that much about multiplayer, hence why no one plays it as much. And if beta testing was added, even like another 3 months, imagine where the game would be and how much more fun we would be having at this point in time if it released now and the game was not completely broken at release. Okay, on to another point. I do admit from here and from release, the dev team has fixed a lot of issues, but there are still huge issues looming over the game. But for example, the absolute biggest thing that needed to be tested and at least somewhat balanced on release, because it's a huge part of the game and still needs balancing until this day, is the perk system. It is horrendously grindy without mods. This should have been tested and tested yet again. They should have devoted maybe an entire month of beta testing just for the perks. Like, this is all time that should have been added and should have been fixed before they even tried releasing the game. Perks are still completely broken, and at this point in time, you can't have a well-rounded character at all, and we're 3 months in. And if you want to have a pure vanilla playthrough, you will have to focus on a single perk the entirety of a playthrough in order to even get close to maxing it out and actually using the good perks that come along with grinding out an entire skill tree. Let's take the trading skill tree, for example. And at the very end of it, you have the perk to buy thieves. It is an absolute grind. You have to grind and grind and grind again in order to get close to leveling up your trade skill to even be able to trade for fiefs, for like castles and crap, because you have to spend so much time grinding, and they are outrageously expensive. Like, I'm talking about millions of dinars, so you have to grind for that too. And heck, mods can fix this problem, the grinding problem for this, such as Bannerlord tweaks, which is a mod I personally do recommend because the perk system is broken. But wow, it's really like the devs just rushed single player out there without doing any sort of basic testing. At least put 3 months, maybe just 3 months of more testing out there, or maybe just half a year. Just put that out there of beta testing for single player, so we actually have a more playable and in-depth game before it's actually released. And some skills and perks are even broken in their own right, even if you do grind them out. For example, smithing. You can smelt a javelin and sell it for 50k dinars, and repeat the process over and over again just to build up money. And quests, quests are still an issue within this game. Some quests are just freaking broken because the devs have refused to play their own game. And this is detracting from the overall depth and experience that you should be getting from a playthrough of this game. Don't get me wrong, I love the idea of quests, and I really do love the depth that they provide, but right now, they are just repetitive and are even broken. There are quests that are broken and that can crash and corrupt your saves. Why did the devs not even try playing through and testing their own game? This honestly should be called a beta right now instead of an early access, because there are so many broken features of key components in this game that it needs to straight up be tested. We are beta testing the game. We aren't even actually playing the game. We're doing the beta test for the developers just so they can get money. Honestly, that's my perspective on it. And don't even get me started on the missing dialogue in the game. You could at least add missing bits and then add more dialogue later before you released it. And importantly, what's absolutely crazy is that none of this is being fixed at the moment because the devs are trying to rework the entire engine of the game so it can better support mods and be more optimized. And that's the reason for the lack of recent patches. This kind of rework is not what should be in an early access game. This is what happens in the beta of a game. And an engine rework is a massive problem for a game. And this problem has been an issue before because it's apparently part of the reason why the game has taken so long to come out in the first place, because they needed to rework their engine. I can't imagine when we actually end up getting a content update, because this engine rework could take absolutely forever, just as it has in the past, as we've seen delaying the release of this game countless times. And honestly, in order to be released in early access, the core game should have been released, and optimization updates are understandable and patches are understandable for a game in early access. And it's extremely important that the game should have been at least playable, and the very core, I'm talking like the engine and the basics of the game, should have been like perfect. They should have been perfect upon early access, because in my mind, early access is for features to be added and to optimize the game. It's not for reworking the base of the game, which is the game engine. Like, I'm not even talking about content of the game. I'm talking about like what actually makes the game work. That's not to be fixed in early access. That needs to be done before the game is even released. But yet, Tailworlds, I think, just jumped the gun because they needed money for whatever reason. And I feel like if they released it a year later, sorry for my loss of train of thought, it would have been a great and even better game, and would have at least kept a way more stable player base for much longer, because you can play for a week straight, which a lot of people did, and you already experienced everything the game has had to offer. And they're not even adding major updates to the game. They're just patching what's broken, which is unreal for early access. Like, all the issues they've been fixed could have been noticed if they just spent, I'm telling you, maybe not even a year, but 3 months beta testing their own game and developing features and like fixing their own game, doing that engine fix, which is going to take several months, if even longer. And who knows, like 12 months from the time it was released, which was March 2020 to March 2021, would have been a massive improvement over the game. And now, alright, I know a lot of y'all would argue the peak player count would be down, but in all honesty, the hype was not going anywhere. They could have announced the game was coming out in March 2021, and the hype would still be there, and people would have still been lining up to get this game just as much as they were at its release in March 2020. And as long as a date was given, they'd be fine to keep developing it, and I'm sure another year would not have killed anyone, so it would not have been detrimental to the popularity of the game. And I really do think it would have been better for the community and the game as a whole if it was released a year later, because the depth would be there and the initial game would be immensely better. And it would have allowed for more beta testing and for the devs to actually play their own freaking game and maybe fix the tiny little issues that plagued us at the start of the game, and maybe just maybe fix the core issues, so instead of getting patches, we're getting full on content updates in early access. But this is just my opinion, so I'm just putting it out there of what I think. And honestly, I don't see any content updates coming in the near future because the devs need to still work on fixing all the broken things. And all in all, I'm disappointed, to say the least. I really wanted this game to be so much better and so much more than Warband ever was. But after how many years of development, we ended up getting a game that only looks prettier but accomplishes nothing more than Warband did. I wanted a game that I can experience the full depth of Warband and not have to worry about stupid bugs. Yes, Warband has its bugs, but I don't even know how to put it. We wanted Warband, but they could have given us Warband and added more to the story, and I would have been happier about the game rather than the game just looking prettier. They added so many more features, but those so many more features are incomplete. I'd rather have a full, complete game and more depth, just more story, because it's truly awesome. And I really do think this game has so much potential in it to be a fantastic game, and I really still hope that this game lives up to what everyone wanted it to be, a better Warband. Not completely different from Warband, but a more in-depth story of Warband, not a continuation, but a good prequel to it. I feel like that's what the majority of die-hard Warband Mount and Blade gamers truly wanted. But in the end, we just got a game that looks prettier, and I really do hope it can accomplish what we want it to accomplish to be. So, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video, and feel free to drop a subscription to A Disgruntled Gamer. If you agree with me, feel free to like the video, and if you don't, let me know your opinion in the comment below. This has been Blue.